Will you please pray with me? Ever-living God, take our feet and walk through them. Take our hands and work through them. Take our ears and hear through them. And take our eyes and see through them. Take our minds and think through them. Take our lips and speak through them. And take our hearts and set them on fire. For your sake, amen. Inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, Abuna Nicholas, the Greek monk on duty, limps toward the door, crosses himself along the stone of unction, where tradition says that Jesus' body was prepared before burial. He unlocks the loophole and checks who knocks. Ouija Nusbaha announces himself to the monk. The monk pushes the ladder through the porthole. Mr. Nussbaugh props it against the stone wall and climbs up to the keyhole. Yet, he still needs the keys that are handed over to him by Adib Jawad Judah. Mr. Nussbaugh, with the keys in hand, unlocks and pushes the heavy wooden door to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre open. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was first built in 325 of the Common Era, stands on holy ground. The ground is deemed sacred by many Christians because they believe the church is located on the actual site of the location of Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. And since 636 of the Common Era, Mr. Nussbaugh's family has been unlocking and opening the door to the church, while Mr. Judah's family has been holding on to the keys for only the past 9 centuries. Not only are Nussbaugh and the Judah families prominent Palestinians, they are Muslims as well. These two Muslim families got to keep the keys and the door because quarrels among the various Christian denominations within the church. Like brothers, we fight sometimes, confessed the very Reverend Father Samuel Aboigan, who is the Armenian superior of the Holy Sepulchre. And when he says fight, he really does mean fight. For example, 4 years ago, decorations and tapestries were toppled as monks traded kicks and punches and threw anything they could lay their hands upon during one of their turf wars within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, because one person was deemed in the wrong place at the wrong time. We keep almost awake at night here to see that things are done properly, on time, and no one will trespass the other's right by doing things that he's not supposed to do, said Father Aboigan. So we have to be careful and watch what we do or what they do. The competition for prominence and position is centuries old. And the denominations that share the church continue to this day to jealously guard their turf, making sure that no one crosses into others' holy spaces. So, the two Muslim families get to continue to keep the keys and unlock the door to prevent one Christian denomination from locking all the other Christians out. My friends, we close and lock doors for privacy and protection, Behind locked doors, we feel that we are in control. Locked doors help protect our turf and protect us from outside threats. Jesus' disciples have barricaded themselves behind locked doors. They are afraid. They are grieving. Jesus has been crucified. Their hopes had been dashed. Even after seeing an empty tomb and hearing Mary Magdalene say she had seen Jesus alive, the disciples go home and lock the doors. Even with the door secured and tightly locked, the risen Christ appears among them and says, "Peace be with you. As God has sent me, so I send you." The disciples present rejoice in seeing Jesus. Now, we're not exactly sure how many disciples were actually present when Jesus appeared among them, but we are told for certainty in the Gospel of John that Thomas was not there. The disciples present tell Thomas that Jesus appeared to them, but Thomas wants to see too. But before we begin to cast guilt upon Thomas as a doubter and skeptic, I want us to pause here and to continue to focus upon those disciples who actually laid their eyes upon Jesus. Even after seeing the crucified Christ for themselves and rejoicing, where are the disciples a week later? They are still inside the house. Even after hearing Jesus say, "Peace be with you. As God has sent me, so I send you," where are the disciples? They are still in the house with the doors shut. Jesus sends them. They stay at home. Jesus' closest followers are huddling behind closed doors in fear. Just like those disciples, we too sometimes lock ourselves in to keep our fears out. We fear loneliness, and we fear intimacy. We fear the unknown. We fear pain and misery. We fear death. We fear losing our control, our freedom, our independence. We both fear failure and we fear success. We fear rejection, but we also fear commitment. We fear that people won't like us if we show our true selves. We fear that we will never be good enough. We fear that we will never discover our purpose in life. In almost every angelic appearance found in the Bible, the announcements begin, "Fear not, do not be afraid." The words "do not be afraid" and "do not fear" echo through the four Gospels 19 times. And so, my friends, why do we want to give Thomas such a hard time when the other disciples are still holed up in the house? At least I believe that Thomas had the courage to speak his doubts and the audacity not to stay behind locked doors, the doors of fear and pain. When we are no longer afraid of the dark, there's evidence of resurrection in our lives. When we dare to live out our affections rather than by our fears, there is resurrection and life in our lives. When we are people who neither fear death nor life, there is resurrection and life breathing through our veins. So when Jesus appears to Thomas, Jesus once again said, "Peace be with you. Put your fingers here. See my hands. Reach out your hand. Put it in my side." The Greek verb from which our scriptures are translated in the New Testament, the verb for put or to place is not as gentle as it's usually translated. Put your fingers here, see my hands. I will not believe until I put my hand in his side. It is closer to say that Thomas, according to the Greek, wanted to thrust his hand into the side of Jesus. To thrust his hand in the woundedness of Christ and the world. In Kate McGillhaw's poem, Thomas, she writes, "Put your hand, Thomas, on the crawling head of a child imprisoned in a cot. Place your fingers, Thomas, on the list of those who have disappeared. Stroke the cheek, Thomas, of the little girl or the little boy sold into prostitution. Touch, Thomas, the gaping wounds of my world. Feel, Thomas, the primal wound of my people. Reach out your hands, Thomas, and place them at the side of the poor. Grasp my hands, Thomas, and believe. When you feel in the world's pain and the world's glory." Amen.